Hello, welcome to another episode of the StartUp MeetUp podcast with me, your host Matt Roberts, as usual. Today I've got a special guest. I've got Gary, who is, I challenge anyone to not, certainly in the South Yorkshire startup scene, to not know who Gary is. But Gary Neville from Capital Enterprise and also co-founder of the Sheffield StartUp Meetup. I'd introduce you, mate, but I'll leave that to you. Tell us about yourself, tell us a bit of your background, and also how you ended up coming to run the Sheffield Startup Meetup.
Yeah, sure. Background. That's a long background. That is. I've had a bit of a weird road, I guess, to where I am now. But I'll start maybe at Razor. That was I guess the first. So Razor is a software development agency based in Sheffield. They were the people that gave me, I guess, my first opportunity to work in technology. And then from there, I met a great group of people who are now out running their own startups. And one thing I will say about working at somewhere like Razor is you were given the opportunity to go and do things. And I think that was the first time that I really clicked on to actually, I could start a business, or I could run a technology company. And so after that, so I was at Razor. I had enough, really, mate. I tend to do this thing where every 2-3 years, I take a year out and go and travel, reset, and figure out what I want to do. So I did this at Razor, and ultimately went around Central America, and came back and was looking for kind of something to do. And I knew that the Sheffield Startup Meetup has been around in various forms for quite a long time. It started from Team SY, and it kind of, but then when that funding ran out for it, the event closed, and myself and my co-founder Dan decided that it wasn't good, and we needed more support in the region, and it felt bad that the premier support event was going to die, and so we took it on. And we still don't do it for money. We do it out of our own pockets, but it's great. It's fascinating to see how the region, if I'm honest, has grown, because I'm not sure if we'll come on to it later, but South Yorkshire punches well above its weight when it comes to kind of founders and kind of the support given and the companies that are coming out of it. And I travel with Capital Enterprise. I travel up and down the country now and look at innovation ecosystems across the UK. I've just come back from Belfast, where I've been doing some work out there with Barker's Eagle Labs. And what I can say is, yes, Sheffield and South Yorkshire is amazing, really, for what it does and how small it is and the investment it gets. And it can only really go one way from here, when there's people like yourself, right, who are also plugging away and trying to support the ecosystem. So, yeah, it's grand. I love it, and I think there's a lot of potential. We just need to realise it and all get on the same page and start communicating.
Yeah, absolutely. So, on the running the Sheffield Startup Meetup, so you've been running it for over a year now? Well over a year.
Yeah.
Yeah, and obviously you've changed role, you've moved into Capital Enterprise, which is much more about, I guess, the innovation space within South Yorkshire and things like that. How has your understanding of the startup scene in South Yorkshire changed? When you first started running the Startup Meetup, you'll have had some ideas about, this is what the landscape is. That must have changed in the past year and a bit.
Oh, 100%. And it's not just the Startup Meetup that's changed that. I think getting a role within Capital Enterprise fundamentally changed that, because that's their domain. That's what they do. They ultimately, the company I work for, Capital Enterprise, run accelerator programs across the UK to support various startups and spin-outs and scale-ups in different sectors. And when I moved to Capital Enterprise, this was a new domain for me. The only experience I really had in the startup sector and that support programs was from running the startup event and also running my own businesses and also being around people who are running their businesses. So when I guess started taking it on, it was kind of looking at it from, I'm a software person. As soon as I got into software, I kind of knew I was. And what I liked about software is you have, normally, if it's done well, you have a definite problem that you're trying to solve. You work backwards from that problem and you create a solution to solve that problem. And so that's the mindset that I brought into the startup support world and the ecosystem building world. And it's been odd because that's not the normal way that people think about support within the industry. And for a start, I started to think that if you look at the way startup support is delivered currently across the UK within different programs, it often doesn't take into account how broad the word startup is. Right? It's something that I clicked onto about 3 months into my role within Capital Enterprise. I look at the kind of the breadth of different startups. So a startup can go anywhere from someone has an idea at university or at school and ultimately they create a business on company's house and they start trying to trade or create a product and build that product towards MVP, right?
Whatever that means.
Yeah. And then if you go to the other end of the spectrum, you have startups that have raised Series A, Series B, Series C, £20 million. They're still startups, but if you look at the vast difference between those two, it's insane, really. And we use the word startup, I believe, too broadly. And I feel that we need some form of metric that we can put within the startup space to enable us to judge where startups are in that journey and then provide directed support to each one. Because I do feel that there's a bit of a cookie cutter approach at the moment to business support nationwide. And people in if I'm at Sweden and the Netherlands, they do it quite well. They have a better system than us. But ultimately, if we want to be the best innovators in the world within the UK, we need a support program for our businesses that is the best in the world. And from my perspective, and I'm not an expert on this, as mentioned, I've only really been in full time within the kind of innovation ecosystem building, startup support, business support world for like 8-9 months.
Yeah.
But taking my previous experience from how to build great software and how to solve a problem and bring it into this industry, I definitely see similarities, and it's about understanding what the problem is and coming up with solutions to solve that specific problem. And the only way we do that is we understand what startups we've got out there, what support they need, and ultimately at what time in their journey do they need that support.
I think it's a really valid point, right? It feels like, or it certainly feels like, a lot of the programs that certainly I see that are well publicised and well recognised are lowest common denominator, right? And what I mean by that is it's effectively aimed at people who have had no experience in business or corporate in any kind of a way, right? And so therefore it's like, this is how you do accounts. You need to keep accounts, right? This is how you do cash flow. This is how you do R&D tax credit or whatever it is, or these are things that are available to you. And I think that the actual support is quite a lot more nuanced than that, isn't it? Like, there's so much information available at your fingertips. That actually it tends to be, how do I distill this into something that is an action that I need to take now as a new business? Or like, you know, how do I go from, there's all of this differing advice, what is it that I actually need to do to satisfy my statutory requirements, to satisfy me not going to jail because I haven't done this thing as a director of a business? Do you know what I mean? Like, it feels like there's a lot of grey area in that, and because of the lowest common denominator approach, there's a lot of these programs that feel that they I've heard feedback, at least anyway, that exclude people, or at least push people away, because they're just like, well, that's really noddy stuff that I kind of know needs to happen, and I know how to do that, but that doesn't actually help me progress my business.
Yeah, and I think it's interesting to look at the way that support is offered, and I have two sides of kind of this argument. I have one side of, we have a lot of startups now chasing a reduced amount of investment, right? Yeah. So, and I see it from the investor's side as well, as in, if you are looking to distribute your investment, you have a responsibility as an investor to make sure you are distributing that investment in the best way possible. At the same time as that, you actually have more startups who are chasing the investment. And so how do you pick between these startups? And ultimately, I believe we're teaching startups from the very early stage to chase investment. And I don't agree with that. Yeah. I don't. I mean, you need investment to scale. You do, 100%. If you want to go to scale, an IPO, or you want to be acquired, you probably need investment to get there. There's very few companies that can do it like without. And so with those, that's very small set of companies that actually get investment, we need to make sure that the investors, specifically in the north here, understand who they are, why they're great, and what they need. Yeah. And we need to be representatives of the founders to the investors to a certain extent, because it can be a one-sided relationship early on. If you're a founder and you are trying to get investment, you're doing a Series A round, you're looking for £2 million, and you have one investor that's interested, right? Yeah. It's a very unequal relationship at that point, because ultimately you need this person's money to grow your business. But then on the flip side of that, you've also got founders who are probably not right for investment. They're not going to get you 10 times return within the first 2 years. But I feel that we kind of don't acknowledge this, and we don't offer those specific startups. Running £100 million lifestyle business is a cool thing to do, right? Yeah. Not many people do it. But it feels like we need to have a conversation more broadly around what support needs to be delivered. It goes back to that metric that I mentioned at the start. How do we put the startups on some kind of scale? To be like, okay, well, these ones here, these are the thoroughbreds. There's a word that I heard the other day, which I thought was quite cool, before unicorns. So these are your thoroughbreds and unicorns. They need a very specific type of advice and support and investment. But then before that, you do have many companies that are great, have a great product, have a great team, have the potential to sell. Maybe they don't have the potential to scale, like internationally. But very few companies do. So what support do they need? And how do we deliver that support? And then you go one step down from that, and you say, okay, well, this potentially could be £5 million a year company, and it's just going to run, and it's going to add to the local ecosystem, add to the local economy, and it's a solid business. Yeah. What support do they need? And then you've got, and the other thing that I feel that we need to really talk about is failure, because it pisses me off hugely when people denigrate failure. And I understand failure is not good. No one wants to fail. Like, even the people that are failing don't want to fail, right? But sometimes failure is essential for success.
Yeah.
I look at how many times I tried to run a company and ultimately I failed, right? And it was, I would say it was no fault on my own. It was just I didn't know what I didn't know.
Yeah.
Like you were talking about, how do you run your books?
Yeah.
How do you do that? How do I make sure my staff are getting paid? And if we provide the right support at the right time, then we should reduce the failure. But sometimes you're working on something that just isn't right. And if you fail, great. But what we need to do is pick those people up and say, dust yourself off. Yes, it was hard, but let's go again. Or you can use your skills, the entrepreneurial skills that you've used in a different sector.
Yeah, and also your network as well, right? You know, you can't do
100%.
this without building a network of people that are that understand you, that you understand them and what they do, and therefore you can lean on that, right? And you can lean into that.
Yeah,
and you should, in all honesty. And I think that's another, like, to bring it back to the Startup Meetup, I think that's something that's certainly in Barnsley, at least anyway, it provides something that is not a it's an informal setting for building that network, right? As opposed to it being a classroom setting where it's like, we're all here to learn something, and by proxy, I'm going to spend some time talking to you over a cup of coffee or something like that. It's something that is dedicated to building your network. And you know, there's always a speaker, and I know that you guys always have a speaker at the Sheffield one, or like a panel or something that on the face of it presents value to who's going to to the people who attend, but really the value is the people in the ring, and being able to talk to the people in the room, share ideas. You know that everyone's gone through, or like a lot of people have gone through the problems that you're experiencing at the moment, and so therefore having the confidence to be able to do that and say, do you know what, this is really bugging me, or this is something that is keeping me awake at night, leans into that kind of mental health side of it as well, right?
Yeah, and well, I think with any startup meet, I fundamentally agree that a large part of the value of any meetup with startups is the network effect. Yeah. It is understanding that you are not alone, and ultimately there are people out there who potentially could help you in various areas. The difficulty you have, is a difficulty that I've had with Sheffield Startup Meetup, is sustainability to a certain extent. So you have founders that come through the Startup Meetup. They then grow and they get better and better and better, and ultimately they go out. And often they will get investment, and whatever stage that or series that investment is. But as soon as you get investment, the pressure's on. Right? Yeah. You have to make a return. And so those people technically don't need a lot of the support that you will have at more of the lower level kind of entry phase for a startup network. However, what the startup event needs is their experience.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right? And it needs them, people who have been through it, really had to hustle to get to where they are, to come back and share that experience. And it's one of the questions that I've been asking myself loads is, but why should they? Why should they?
What do they?
What do they get?
What's the benefit for it? I don't know. I mean, I kind of like, certainly from my point of view, I kind of see it as a graduation type sort of a thing. Like, you know, it's almost like you go through university or you go through school and you see these fresh-faced, eager startup founders coming through, going like, "Yeah, I've got a brilliant idea." It's always about the idea, isn't it? And then the reality kicks in, and it's like, actually, you know, the Instagram make money quick schemes and TikTok, you know, like pyramid schemes and all of that sort of stuff. They're all smoke and mirrors, and actually, if you want that kind of lifestyle that we're all shown is the target, is the goal, then you've got to put in a lot of work and you've got to sacrifice.
It's so hard. It's so hard. It's one of the reasons that I decided to take a job and not start a business again. Yeah. Because I'm not ready yet. Yeah. I'll be straight up. It's so hard, and it gets easier, and I think what you spoke around of having people around you that are doing it, and ultimately the network you've built. I think it does get slightly easier, but then also you're dealing with larger sums of money or different ways of working. So, but I think sharing the knowledge, it's the easiest way to create growth, right? Because you can learn it for yourself, or you can have a trusted person who comes and teaches you about it. And what I'm looking at doing within Sheffield in the Startup Meetup there is I need those serial founders. I need those high-level business people who have seen it, done it, got the T-shirt, understand how to give advice, to come into the meetup to ensure that the students that are coming through don't make the same mistakes. I mean, they will to a certain extent, but you limit the damage, right? And so how do you do that? And it's a value proposition, right? Everything's a value proposition. And so what I'm currently trying to do is figure out what value can the Startup Meetup or the ecosystem surrounding it offer to the serial founders, the more advanced founders, so they will then come back and share their experience and ultimately help the people who are coming up grow. And I think I've got an idea. I'm not going to say it yet, but in January we're looking at doing a bit of a launch around the new version of the Startup Meetup, and it should be good. I think we've taken the last 12 months and we've broken it down and we've said, okay, well that worked, that didn't work, that worked, that didn't work, and we've kind of got a bit of a team around us now. So yeah, hopefully in January we'll be able to kickstart a new version of the Startup Meetup, which will be better than last time, and hopefully offer more directed support to the right people at the right time, which leads back to what I was talking about at the start.
Good stuff. Well, as soon as it becomes available, I'd love to be able to
big reveal
as well.
Big reveal.
Big reveal. Yeah. I'll come to the launch party, mate. You got you're booking out a big hotel in the middle of Sheffield, are you?
Well, I was thinking the Bahamas.
No, that's good. That's good. As you know, there's a question that I always have to ask as part of the podcast, and that is, what's your ultimate sandwich?
Ultimate sandwich, Jesus. I think my ultimate sandwich would... Oh, that's a hard question.
It is.
That is a very hard question.
It becomes more psychological every time as well. So it depends what time of the day that we're recording. So if it's close to lunchtime or close to breakfast or something like that, then there's a completely different sandwich selection for people.
So it'd have to be, I think, I know what it is. It would be, my ultimate sandwich would be basil, brie, with like prosciutto. Or is it pastrami?
I mean, that's it's just meat, right?
It's some form of meat in it, in a baguette from a bakery in Paris.
Fresh.
It has to be fresh. It has to be fresh.
The full baguette,
or like a tuna and sweet corn from the shop. It depends how hungry I am.
Like I said, a lot depends on the time of day, but then also like how people are feeling, right? That's good.
Yeah,
that's good. Thank you.
What's your ultimate sandwich?
Do you know, there's only one other person that's ever asked me that, as part of the.
It feels a bit one-sided.
It does, I know. I feel like I'm in a position of power. My ultimate sandwich. So the previous one was called a New Yorker, or it is called a New Yorker, and it's shameless plug for my local deli called Truly Scrummy. Or a New Yorkshire is what they call it. So it's like a triple stack. Pastrami, gherkins, Emmental, basically like a kind of New York deli sandwich, but like kind of on toasted white
maybe if I tasted it, that would be my favourite sandwich.
It's classic, it is class sandwich. But actually, I'm feeling, because we're getting into the rugby season, and there's nothing quite like a Sunday morning when you've got a hangover and you're stood by the side of a freezing cold pitch with a sausage and egg with brown sauce on a white bap. Yeah, that's
it.
Yeah, that is like rugby club sausages as well, man. Like it's a revolution. It's a revelation.
Really? Yeah. Not in the rugby club I played in.
Really?
The food wasn't good. Sorry, Joan. I mean, I think Joan's dead now. God rest her soul. But yeah.
What were you league or union?
Union.
Oh yeah. What position did you play?
All over really. I played from when I was 7 to when I was about 20, and obviously body type changes.
Of course, yeah.
But inside centre, outside centre, flanker. It depends who I played for as well,
right.
So whether it be university, school, county, or wherever. So it was, I was a universal player, but it was mainly based on size. I stopped growing when I was about 12. So I started as a prop and then moved way down.
Yeah, nice. As part of your work with Capital Enterprise, you must have seen quite a lot of national programs and been exposed to the national scene on a more helicopter basis. What do you see as the difference between, let's say, it's going to be the southeast really, isn't it, and then London and the southeast and the rest of the UK, or particularly north?
So in the UK you tend to have 3, I guess, separate areas that are well known for startups and kind of growing startups. So you've got your Golden Triangle, which is your Oxford, your Cambridge, which goes down to London. But London also has a slightly separate side with its kind of fintech area and its technology area. And then you come up and you've got the Northern Triangle. So that's Manchester, Leeds and Sheffield. But then on top of that, I guess you've also got Liverpool, which is doing amazingly well. And I think I mentioned I've just come back from Belfast, which is phenomenal. They have everything in place to be really good. The big difference, though, between the divide is cash, access to investment, and it is getting better. There is more cash flowing towards the north now, because I think that the investors have started to realise actually that some of the spin-outs that are coming out of University of Manchester, University of Sheffield are well worth a look, and ultimately they can probably get more equity in a company than they would in London and everything else that goes around that. So I think actually the North is at an advantage. And the reason I say that is it's been ignored for so long. And so when I go down south, I feel that the founders are good, but they're probably not as rounded and as hardened as founders in the North. And because it's the same with anything, if you're used to operating in a restricted environment, when that restricted environment starts to become unrestricted, you can flourish quicker because you're so used to operating at a disadvantage to a certain extent. And I feel that now more investment is coming north. There's lots of companies and there's lots of investors that are going, wow, I didn't know that was there. And I look at Manchester. Manchester is a phenomenal city. It is incredible. But then you've got these hubs. So if we say Liverpool, Manchester, Sheffield, Leeds, but then you go out from that and you go, okay, because I genuinely believe that innovation can fundamentally change the UK economy and also the people living within it. And that's not just city-based, that's also regional. But how does that work? And you do the Barnsley MeetUp, right? Which is a regional community within South Yorkshire. And how do regional communities benefit from innovation? I mean, I'm going to throw that back at you. How do you feel that regional communities currently benefit from innovation, and then how could they benefit from innovation?
Well, I mean, it's a broad question, isn't it? But in terms of innovation, it's kind of like, what is a startup, right? But the tangible benefits are always very hard to quantify, right? Because fundamentally, if you've got a number of businesses that are symbiotic but are also innovating in their own space, then that brings more interest to the region. It brings more money. It brings more affluence. It brings better quality of employees of people to then have kids who then go to the local schools, who then bring the quality of the schools. Do you know what I mean? It's got such a knock-on and wide-reaching effect that actually, you know, the things that the likes of Tracy Johnson has done with the digital ecosystem, particularly in Barnsley, actually, to be fair, and you know, now I genuinely don't believe that we'd be talking about the digital SEAM campus here, including the DMC, but then like kind of all the way up to the college. Sorry, I'm pointing that way largely because the college is up there, but you know, that wouldn't be possible without people like Kerry Batchelder, without people like Tracy Johnson, and you know the programs that they ran.
You got to throw Tom Wolford in there.
Yeah, absolutely.
Wolfie's a legend.
Yeah,
I want Tracy and Tom, legends, both of you. Love you, big respect.
But that's just it, right? You know, without that, then it doesn't draw the attention of funding, which then fuels innovation because people feel like they have the space to fail. And coming back to that whole point of like, you know, failure, you've got to throw a lot of money at stuff for some of it to be successful, right? And so,
but for me, it's how do you limit that? So yes, you have to throw money at things to see that if it's successful, but I also see waste everywhere. Waste everywhere, honestly. Do you know, working in the software world, I know that often software gets a bad name because it doesn't deliver on the outcomes that it promises. But that's a different question. That's a scoping question, in my opinion. They're not taking the time to understand the problem they're solving. They're trying to develop themselves out of it. But what software has taught me is how to be efficient and how to use the money in the best possible way that you can to solve a small problem. And I then look at the business support area within the UK, across the UK. This is not one regional problem. This is across the UK. And they're trying to solve something without really understanding what the problem is. And when you do that, you end up spending way more money.
Yeah,
you become inefficient. And how I feel, and I think part of the reason this is the communication between all the different departments and all the different government bodies and all the different support mechanisms that we have across the UK is bad. They don't communicate. We need a shared vision of kind of what we need to do. And I'm very happy to see that Manchester, Leeds and Sheffield are now communicating more.
Yeah.
However, it needs to be broader. It definitely does. And how do we facilitate that communication? Because there's people like me and you who we do the startup event for shits and giggles, right?
Yeah.
We want to make a difference within the communities, but ultimately we're not supported from the level of kind of government. So and those organisations are vital for sustainability and growth of the innovation ecosystem within the UK. But how can we how can we be supported more? And I think that's the key thing is I love doing what I do. And even though I've got a full-time job, I still have a deep passion for creating a startup event that's based in South Yorkshire and in Sheffield because I care about the city. And I believe that by creating this ecosystem, we can improve the places that we live. And
yeah, absolutely.
So and it's a question, what support do we need and how do we get it so we can do it to the best of our ability? And I think it needs to be a broader question across the regions to figure out what that is and who do we need to speak to get it done.
I mean, just coming back to something that you mentioned earlier is like, the lack of communication. I think sometimes that's intentional, right? You get people that are trying to build a kingdom. They're trying to carve out, this is my domain, and therefore I want to take all of the plaudit. I want to take all of the accolade and all of that sort of stuff. And actually, that hinders growth and collaboration and the elevation of all of the regions or all of the area, the country, right? And so, yeah, I mean, I don't know what the answer is, other than the fact is that we're talking. We have a semi-regular conversation about how to best knit our communities together, knit our events together in a way that is sympathetic to the wider goal of helping startups, right? Helping people either get into starting their own business or taking their idea from an idea stage to an actual product or a service or a business. And I think that's, like you say, crucial to bring other meetups, other networking events, other regional events together.
Yeah, and it's how can we help each other to achieve what question, right? What is the problem we are trying to solve? And I think it's critical that everyone asks themselves this whenever they're looking at doing something, whether that be a startup who is trying to build something, or whether that's me and you running the events that we run. What is the problem we're really trying to solve? And I've asked myself this a lot, right? And ultimately, I feel the problem that I am trying to solve with the startup event that I run is about facilitation of communication across different parts of the city. So whether that's a student, or whether that's someone who's maybe an older founder, or whether that's someone who's is changing jobs, or whether that's someone who's just in a different space in their life, facilitating communication so they can then take what they want to do on to the next level. And then the spin out of that, of kind of, I guess, the consequences of that is then that it has an impact in the local economy. Hopefully it goes wider and it has an impact on the kind of national economy, but you can never preempt that. I'm trying to build a local community and a local society and bring everyone up from the inside. So that's how I see kind of the problem I'm trying to solve. But I think when you have support programs that are run and pushed by different bodies, whether that Innovate or bodies, I often don't feel that they've asked themselves what problem are they trying to solve, as opposed to, we think there's a problem in this area, so we're going to throw a load of cash at it and see what happens. I also read a book, I don't want to name check a book actually, it's called How to Build Big Things, and it's about this guy who, he's a professor in Harvard, and what he's done is he's listed out like 26,000 mega projects and big, large projects. And no one's ever done this before, apparently. And he's got all the data from all of these programs. And what he says within this book is that if you look at time, impact, and cost, and the deliverables on that, only 0.05% of projects worldwide deliver on time, on budget, and on impact. And it really took me back, and I was like, so that's what 95.5% don't. And he goes into the reasons why this is. And often it is about because people don't understand how to kind of ask why. Ask, why are we doing this? And then the course concept that he kind of sits behind, and I am now a convert to this, is think slow, act fast.
Right.
We don't do enough communication and enough thinking up front and say, do you know what, that's the direction we need to go in.
Yeah.
And this is what we need to achieve. Does everyone understand what they need to do? Does everyone understand their role? You do. Okay, let's go.
Yeah.
It's dribs and drabs, and I do feel it's something that hopefully we're moving towards as we get better and we communicate more as a community. And I'm hoping the Labour government steps in and keeps it funding the innovation ecosystem, because I do feel it's important. However, I do believe it could be way more efficient.
Right. Good stuff. Thank you very much. So thank you very much, Gary, for coming for an interview today. It's been really good. It's been really interesting to have you on. So yeah, thank you very much.
No problem at all. Thanks for having me down. Hopefully we can do... Can I just say one thing?
Yeah, of course.
Next time, are we going to dress up? Because you told me to bring my dragon outfit.
And yeah, absolutely. I think we should definitely dress up for the next
one. We need a bit more flashiness on this podcast.
Definitely. A bit more flair. That's it for this edition of the podcast. Thank you once again to my guest, Gary. And the Startup Meetups in Barnsley are the second Thursday of every month at the DMC2. You can get tickets on Eventbrite, and it's free to attend, and it will always be free. And the Sheffield StartUp Meetups are the last Thursday of every month.
Last Thursday.
And I believe, Gary, you're also committed to them being free for forever.
They're going to be free forever. I'm going to go out and find some money.
Awesome.
If you've got money, I'm over it.
Good stuff. That's it for now. Thank you very much.